the Select Board meeting, December 22nd, 2020, the town of Walpole. And we will begin, as we always do, with the Pledge of Allegiance. So please rise. Pledge allegiance to the flag, United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, and I will announce, as we regularly do, that we'll be participating remotely during the meeting due to the governor's authorization for remote participation for all public boards due to the emergency declaration order issued on March 12th, 2020. Every vote that will be taken shall be taken by a roll call vote. And the fifth member of the select board, who is not here with us right now, Mark Gallivan, is dealing with a family matter and will be joining us shortly. Everyone is fine, no issues there. He'll be joining us a little later, but we will get started. Under our appointments with 7 p.m. with Mr. Jack Wiley. See, Mr. Wiley is here for a discussion and vote on the Adams Farm fees for photographers, proposed and voted on by Adams Farm, the Adams Farm Committee. So Jim Johnson, if you could start us off there with maybe a bit of an explainer and some background on this, please.
Yeah, sure. So a little while ago, we were approached by Jack and the Adams Farm Group, asking to change the fees and take a look at, because we have a lot of photographers who come forward and ask to, take some pictures up there, and so if we could make some changes to that. I thought it was a good idea. I asked Jack to put something together and come before the board. And just for your information, the town doesn't fund the Adams Farm. We don't really have a general funding source for that. They don't have a line item budget in any of our lines. They just mostly work off of gift donations and any other funds they can raise. So that's kind of the background on it. And Jack, you want to jump in? And did I miss anything there?
We have noticed over the years that photographers often are using Adams Farm as their backdrop. These are professional photographers. And we have been asked a few times, is there some fee for it? Our response has been, we don't have a formal fee schedule. We just had one recently, and they did their photo shoot and sent us a donation as a gift. So other people that I've talked with don't think it is unreasonable to charge. I think it's a reasonably nominal fee for a photographer to use Adams Farm as with their subjects and use the farm wherever they happen to be as their backdrop. So what we did is come up with an annual permit that from January 1 through December 31 at $100. If they come in partially through the year, then from July 1 through December 31, a fee of $60. And this would go to the Adams Farm fee account. We have a fee account and a gift account. Any questions?
No, that's great. Thanks for the additional information there, Jack, and thanks for joining us tonight. At this point, I'd open it up to a show of hands or any questions or comments that any of the board members may have. Nancy, please.
Jack, is this consistent with what other towns do, or do other parks, or does, Bird Park, does the trustees, do they do something similar to this? And are the fees on schedule with what they charge at other places?
I don't know. I don't know what other places do. It just seemed that we are seeing a lot of people, particularly around the barn and the butterfly garden. We see a lot of activity there with professional photographers, but I don't know what other people or trustees or whatever does.
And how would we enforce this, or is it kind of honor system?
It'd have to be an honor system.
Thank you, Jack.
All right, thanks, Nancy. Any other questions or points of discussion for Mr. Wiley while he's with us here?
I do have a question.
Please, David.
Mr. Wiley, what type of photographs? Are they wedding photographs, family photographs, high school graduation photographs?
All of the above and others. I've seen like younger people, young kids. We know definitely weddings and graduation pictures. I know there was one group a while back, they had their wedding, they stopped at Adams Farm for pictures and then went to their reception. So it gets a wide variety. I think I'm not sure what you would call it, but they are putting a portfolio together for a presentation to, I don't know if it's a prospective employer or application for something, and you see that sort of thing as well.
Okay. And what is the rental rates for, $100 even for a seasonal thing? That sounds like a lot of money to me. I know you called it nominal, but I think that is a lot of money.
Well, I think
I get the idea of it, but I think it's great if a high school kid wants to get a professional photographer and ask him to come to one of the sites at Walpole and take a picture. But if he doesn't happen to be a photographer that comes to Walpole very much, then the kid's going to end up, or the family's going to end up having to choose someplace else because they won't be willing to pay an extra $100 just to go to Adams Farm. So I think it's a lot of money. I think, and even the weddings, I don't know that, is that wedding photographer, going to get another wedding in the area and end up having to stop by Adams Farm, adding $100 to the fee. I think that's a significant amount of money.
I think that with the weddings, if someone has a wedding, we have had weddings at Adams Farm, then when they pay their fee for use of typically the barn pavilion and the area around it, that would be if they have a photographer, that would be included in that fee for the wedding itself, not a separate fee. But I know that there was a particular, a couple of years ago, they just wanted to stop at Adams Farm and take pictures of the wedding party. More than likely, probably would be a nominal cost compared to what a wedding photographer and all the rest that goes along with a wedding. And I think what we're seeing is we know that people are doing it on a repeat basis. So they're charging their customer, the photographer is charging their customer money, and it just seems as since they're making some income from that it is not unreasonable to ask for a nominal fee, which they can use all year long if they want to. So, and just as an example, the person who asked about a fee, and then we told them we don't have one, they sent a donation of $150. So that particular person thought it was well worth the $150 for that particular activity that photographer did.
And
Thank you.
there'll be no exceptions for a Walpole resident?
I don't think
the subject of the photograph, not the photographer.
No, I think it gets to be you try to police what the subject is and where they're from. I think we just tried to keep it as simple as possible. We do have a different schedule for someone who wants to rent the barn. Walpole residents get a preference over out-of-town applicants.
And how much is the barn rental?
Town residents, $100, and for non-residents, $200.
Okay. Thank you, Jack. Any further comments or questions from the board? I would add, and I think I appreciate, Jack, really what you said at the start of this discussion when you were explaining the root of this. And it really is a donation, right? And so I've been at Adams Farm before, and in one mountain bike ride, seen upwards of 6 different photographers over there taking pictures. It's a wonderful sight, not just the trails, but as you mentioned, the butterfly garden and the structure. So I think encouraging a donation of $100 from folks who utilize that facility really goes a long ways towards the maintenance and upkeep and expanding and whatever we may want to do over there, which just generates additional interest and generates additional beautification, which makes it such a draw for pictures. So I think a donation, a suggested donation, more so than a fee, is really the way to look at it, seeing as you can't enforce it easily. Yes, Nancy, anything to add?
A question for Jim Johnson. As far as when we have to justify fee schedules and things like that, if they get challenged, or maybe I like where Ben is, or I think he's starting to go, that we put it out there as a suggested donation when we do things like this. If we want to maybe start that way for the first year or something and then revisit it, or I just know that in the past that we have to be able to justify fees in case they're challenged. So I'm just wondering what you think about that.
I like Ben's idea. I think suggested donation will go a long way. There was a rule, and I know George is on here. Ilana Quirk used to always make reference to it. It was the Leslie rule is something that you have to meet 3 or 4 requirements to institute a fee. George, does this sound familiar at all?
No.
Oh. Well, you have to basically be able to justify it. Yes, we put so many out, it's our personnel has gone out and done X, Y, and Z. And I'll look back, but I like Ben's idea of a donation. So.
Well, and I think, to that point, Nancy, I'm not suggesting that we change it. I think it's a fee. It's something that they can put out there as part of the schedule in Adams Farm. It's what they do. But to the extent that it's not being reinforced, it really is just a suggested donation. People are doing it anyways. I think it's a good idea. So at this point, I would hear a motion if somebody is moved to make one.
So Ben, my concern is just that over the years we have been challenged on the way we institute a fee, and I love the idea that we're being creative to try to generate revenue. I just want to make sure that we then don't get challenged by somebody. So I'm just wondering if we should look into this a little bit further and see, because I especially having gone over redoing fees and back when I was on the planning board, when we were charging for certain things, and it was exactly what Alana used to say, the gold standard, the litmus test of fees. And, we heard that for years, that we have to be able to justify how we're making them. So I just want to be cautious before we move ahead with this. If Jack had answered, yes, we got these fees from this town, this town, and this town, and this is what they're charging and they're comparable, like, I'm all for it. And I don't want to get us into any sort of trouble that we're, as you said, we're making this fee, we're setting a fee, but honestly, because nobody's, policing it or regulating it, that it's really just a suggested donation. Well, I don't want to get us into trouble kind of making those words either.
So I'm not sure how
that gets us. I'm not sure how that gets us into trouble, though. I mean,
Mr. Chair.
Yeah, George, please.
George Pucci again. Good evening, George Pucci from Town Council's office. hearing the conversation further, I know what Jim is talking about.
Emerson rules.
He was thinking Leslie College, yes, Emerson College test. And basically, there are elements to it, but the long and the short of it is it has to be tied to the cost of the service provided as opposed to a revenue raising item. So if, we can give you a further opinion on it and an analysis, but that's the test that you were referring to, the Emerson College test.
So it's a 3-pronged test. I just pulled it up that back in '84 they established. The courts state that the fees are based on services being provided or delivered, legitimate when services received for the fee are provided only to the beneficiaries of the services rather than the general public, and paid by choice. So those are the 3 the rules that you use when setting a fee.
Well, yeah, seeing as there's no penalty for not paying it, it's not like the planning board or anything formal. If somebody doesn't want to pay the fee, then they'll just go take their pictures. Jack's not going to be up there with a steno pad asking them for their registration number. So I think we're getting a little screwed down into the ground about this. It's part of the regular fee schedule at Adams Farm. If people want to use it, they should pay the fee. They should make a donation. If they don't want to, then they won't. And I don't know that there's going to be any enforcement taking place. So I don't see the legal, that we're opening up the town to any legal challenges there. As far as somebody suing the town over photography fee. I don't know if the experience of the board has been different. I'm willing to hear that now, but subject to that, any further discussion or questions from the board?
The other, if I may,
Please, David.
and the other benefit of being in front of a computer is Bird Park apparently has no fee, except for a picnic area. Actually, I don't even know if there's a fee for that. Yes, they have the only fee that they have is for rental for 50 or more people.
Yeah. Well, then I would wonder what
Up to 50, up to 50 people. So.
Yeah, and I'd wonder, what is the endowment of the trustees as well, right? They're not looking for just donations from photographers who come out. They're not relying on that at all. They have a very deep-pocketed organization, not Adams Farm in the situation we're talking about, which is getting some fees for usage for upkeep and maintenance and whatnot. So, again, thank you, David, for looking that up. Any other discussions or questions from the board? Okay, being that there is none, I'll make a motion to approve the new Adams Farm fee schedule for photographers as proposed this evening by Mr. Jack Wiley and approved by the Adams Farm Group prior to bringing it before the board.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Being that there's no further discussion, proceed with a roll call vote. Let's see, we'll go in order here. Nancy McKenzie.
You're on mute, Nancy.
Mute, Nancy.
Okay, sorry. Aye, and thank you, Jack, for recommending this.
David Salvatore.
No.
Jim O'Neill.
Aye.
Mark Gallivan.
Aye.
And Ben Barrett. Aye. The motion passes 4-1-0. Thank you again, Mr. Wiley, for coming before us and giving us that additional information.
Thank you for the opportunity to present this to you, and thank you for your vote.
Great. Thank you. Have a good evening.
And you too.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Item number 2 under appointments here. And let's see. Oh, Ms. Joyce. We have Ms. Joyce with us. Hello. How are you this evening? Apologies for getting to you a little late here. But great. So we have Ms. Rebecca Joyce with us, and for the board to consider and vote to approve her request to launch the Keep Walpole Beautiful Mural Box project, which the board received, a letter on, and honestly, some substantial information on that program. Jim Johnson, do you have anything to add here? And then we could hear from Ms. Joyce.
Sure. A couple weeks ago, Highway Superintendent Drew Hand and I met Rebecca out right in front of Tessie's in the Raven's Nest. we talked a little bit about the program that she's looking to implement here. I think it'll, you know, make the center a little bit more aesthetically pleasing. And Drew was comfortable with it. I was comfortable with it. Most importantly, Anderson Electric, who maintains those boxes, was comfortable with it. So that's why we're here today. So I guess we'll open it up to the board, Ben.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks, Jim. And Ms. Joyce, is there anything you'd like to add to your letter and to say before the board in the meeting tonight?
If you've read the letter, then I think you have a lot of information, but I'm happy to answer questions.
Okay, great. Thank you. We'll just go in order here with the board members for comment or questions. Nancy, please go ahead.
I think it's absolutely wonderful. I actually had mentioned this to Jim probably about 4 years ago. So I'm really, really excited that you're taking this up and going forward with it. So thank you. Huge.
Great. David?
Just question, how will the artwork be reviewed and determine, who will determine what will go where?
Sure. So we have cultural council. Members of the Walpole Cultural Council with members of Keep Walpole Beautiful, who would make the final selections. And then once we work with the artist to finalize the designs and make sure that they fit right on the boxes and things, I think that we would want to run it past, get a final approval from someone in the town, if that's Jim, or just to kind of give it a final glance over to make sure that everyone's on board.
That sounds good. And hopefully we won't have the Jersey barriers up in the center of town next summer, but if we do, I would suggest perhaps opening that up for some people to paint those as well, if you wish.
I think I mentioned that there's a lot of towns that are actually doing that, but like, I mean,
I don't know. Hopefully they won't be there next summer, but we'll see. If they are, you know, at least just paint them some color anyway. Maybe. Not even artwork, just put some color on it would be nice. Anyway, thank you.
We'll talk.
Thank you for all that you've done. Thank you for all of you've done. Thank you.
Jim O'Neill.
I'm all for it. I think it's a great idea. Thanks very much for bringing it forward, Becca.
Cool. Thank you.
And Mark Gallivan.
I'm all for it. I think it's a great idea, and we'll liven up some of the intersections in town, which is a great idea.
Great.
Great.
Thanks, Mark. And I would just add, and spurred by David's comments, I agree. I hope that we don't have the barriers there, but it'd be great if that could actually be a sidewalk instead of parking spaces, so that we can still have those tables and chairs. That was phenomenal. I mean, that's exactly what we need downtown. So, whole different discussion, but I digress. If there's no further discussion from the board, I would hear a motion.
Oh, there we go. I will make a motion to approve the request of Rebecca Joyce to launch and keep Walpole Beautiful mural box project.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Being that there is no further discussion, proceed with the roll call vote. Nancy?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
Jim?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
And Ben, aye, 5-0. The motion passes. Thank you, Ms. Joyce, for being with us tonight, and thank you for this great idea. You know, best of luck. We look forward to it.
Thank you all so much.
Have a great evening.
All right, you too. Bye-bye.
Okay, moving on to new business before the board this evening. Item 1 under new business is the discussion of a letter received on December 8th of this year from Wall Street Development Corp. Pertaining to the Burns Avenue project. I know that we have with us tonight KP Law and Town Council, Mr. George Pucci and Ms. Lauren Goldberg. But Jim Johnson, if you could give us a little background on that letter and what we're looking at tonight.
So this is kind of the first one of these I've ever received. This is from Wall Street Development Corporation, signed by Lou Petrozzi, the president. Lou sent a letter in dated December 8th asking the select board to get involved in a matter regarding Burns Ave. He is not pleased with the development firm that the zoning board chose. His preference would be to go with a different firm, and he's asking, in an effort to further avoid appeal to the HAC, that this board get involved and intervene and overturn the zoning board's decision for their selection of Tetra Tech, which is a consultant they're retaining, and force them to retain the services of Beta to review the proposed changes to the Burns Ave project. I would note that the Burns Ave project, there has been substantial changes to that. It's now a throughway onto Union Street, and I believe it's up to about 40 houses right now when it was down around 28 or 32 houses. So there is some change there. I've asked George to join us tonight just because it's one of those, I want to be mindful since it's our first type of request like this. George, anything else really to add?
No, Jim, that's perfect. I can add just a little bit more background just to fill the board in a little bit.
Sure.
Please.
May I go? Good evening, Mr. Chair and members of the board. George Pucci, again from Town Council's office. Sorry, I missed your site earlier, Jim, but you're keeping me on my toes between Leslie College and Emerson College. But anyway,
it was one of those.
So what you're here for tonight is there is a and Jim noted that you hadn't had this happen before, but there is a provision in both the state statute. I'm sure that many or all of you are familiar with Chapter 44, Section 53G, provides for peer review, consultant review in permitting matters. And so there's an analogous provision for 40B projects, and there are regulations that are promulgated by the state Department of Housing and Community Development, regulations for Chapter 40B applications. Both those regulations and the state statute provide for an administrative appeal to either a city council or a town board of selectmen on a permitting board's selection of a peer review consultant. So that's what this appeal is to you. Apparently you've never gotten one of these before. I'm not surprised because typically these do not occur. So the context that this is being presented to you in is the applicant on the Burns Avenue 40B project had a problem with the selection of the peer review consultant by the Zoning Board of Appeals. And that consultant is Tetra Tech, well-known engineering firm and peer review consulting firm to do peer review of site engineering and traffic. The applicant has exercised his right of filing this administrative appeal, appealing the selection of Tetra Tech to your board under the applicable, both under the state statute and under the regulations for Chapter 40B. So that's how that's before you tonight. Jim had noted correctly, there was an original approval by the Zoning Board of Appeals for 32 units on the project at Burns Avenue, and that had one single point of access and egress to the project site. The applicant filed an appeal of the board's approval of that project for 32 units to the Housing Appeals Committee, which is the state administrative board who hears appeals by developers of either a denial of a comprehensive permit application or a approval of the application with conditions that the developer finds objectionable. So he filed the appeal to Housing Appeals Committee. While that appeal was pending, he filed a notice of project change with the board that the Housing Appeals Committee has remanded to the Zoning Board of Appeals for further public hearing. And that's where the appeal comes out of on the peer review selection. That notice of project change is for 40 units, as Jim had noted, which is a 25% increase from the 32 units approved. So the board is conducting a public hearing on the project change, but also, as Jim had noted, in addition to the increased unit count, there's a whole new traffic pattern proposed for the project with a throughway to the project and 2 points of access and egress. So it's a very different project than what was approved. Under the procedures or the standards for appeal for the administrative review, and I should note, the board actually, there is no constructive approval provision. So if the board chose not to act on this appeal, it could have done so. And in which case, if a month passes after the appeal with no decision by the Board of Selectmen, the peer review selection by the Zoning Board of Appeals shall stand. So this matter is before you, on a timely basis of whether you want to consider this appeal. So if you could either decline to act on the appeal in its entirety, or if you go ahead and decide to deliberate and act on the appeal and vote on the appeal, whether to affirm or deny it, there's a distinct standard that's set forth for the standard of review, and that's under the regulation. So that grounds for appeal to the Board of Selectmen shall be limited to claims that the consultant selected has a conflict of interest or does not possess the minimum required qualifications for the job. And you've been presented with the applicant's letter on this. And it's up to you, if you want to hear this appeal or decide this appeal, to apply that standard, that either the consultant has a conflict of interest or does not possess the minimum required qualifications. And without getting too much into your decision making, this is a well-qualified firm, and there's no conflict of interest that's been identified, which would be some type of financial interest in the applicant's project. So that's the context by which this is presented to you tonight, and I'm available to answer any further questions that you have on it.
Yeah, thank you, George. Really comprehensive explanation there. One of the reasons that this was brought before the board tonight after we received that letter is because I do believe it would be prudent of the board to act on this one way or the other, and we can have our discussion here and ask any questions of George that you all would like to, but I do think it's prudent to act on this. There's a way for us to do that, a procedural way for us to do that, so I believe we should. I don't believe that we should let it pass by. But that being said, why don't we go around the horn here and hear any questions or comments for George or otherwise. So Nancy, please, if you could start us off.
I really don't have any questions. I think that the zoning board is well within their rights, and I think this is, really not appropriate. So that's my feeling.
Okay, thanks, Nancy. David?
Sorry, I was reviewing the letter again. Was there a reason? So apparently, Beta was the original peer reviewer on this project. Then, as you said, it went up for an appeal. It's back down, and when it came back down, they changed horses. They changed firms. Is that correct analysis?
Yes, it is.
I'm sorry, Ben, can I answer? Usually I wait for you to direct me to answer, but...
Yeah, go ahead, George, please.
Absolutely true. Yeah, Beta was the peer review on the initial project. I would note a couple of things that happened with Beta is they had an estimate, and not to disparage the firm at all, but the community development director and I believe a couple of the members were somewhat unhappy the first time around because the initial estimate was made and the funds were deposited. And then at one point in time, those funds were exhausted, and then the applicant didn't make further deposits. So the board basically, the first time around, was left really with a fairly ineffective peer review for this project. So a couple of concerns came up the second time around was the board had I think that the community development director had another good experience with the firm of Tetra Tech, wanted to, made that recommendation to the board. And the project is so substantially different that it basically, needs to be reviewed in accordance with the scope of the new peer reviewer. And again, the concern came up about not having a realistic estimate of, expected costs for the service. You don't want to be lowballed on it and then end up without a peer reviewer when those funds are exhausted. So that those types of concerns came up the second time around.
Okay, other than the through traffic to Union Street, what was the other difference in the second time around?
There was more houses added.
Okay.
Went from 32 to 40.
Okay. And I have another question. Oh, does the applicant have a right to be heard at this hearing, or the appellant?
Yeah, that's a great question. It not under either the statute or the regulations that I cited. It actually just talks about an administrative appeal and a decision, or not a decision, but it doesn't call for a hearing. It doesn't provide any type of process by which the applicant can be heard on it. It doesn't mean you don't. It doesn't mean you're precluded from hearing from the applicant, but it's not required.
That's interesting. All right, thank you.
Great. Nancy, did you have something to add real quick?
Yes, and also just to note that when Mr. Petrosi decided to redo his scope, and there's a huge difference, and there's a huge difference to the neighbors when you go from a dead-end road to a throughway street. I mean, right from the beginning, years and years and years ago, the neighbors were all very vocal about there being a cut-through and a speedway and things like that. So when Mr. Petrosi made the decision to change his scope, he set himself up to go under a new set of rules for peer review. And we, the zoning board followed those rules in the process, in the bidding process, and then that's what happens. And I mean, I don't think that we should be expecting anything else from the zoning board when they weren't left with money in the till, that they're being financially considerate to the town of Walpole and to our residents, and that's what their job is.
Okay, thank you. Jim O'Neill, please.
Yeah, a couple of questions. George, you talked about minimal qualifications being one of the considerations here. When the zoning board made the choice to go away from Beta and to Tetra Tech, when it came back, when it was remanded back, was the scope of the project change a consideration from a perspective of Beta's qualifications to do the peer review versus Tetra Tech? Do we know that?
Yeah, we it wasn't specifically addressed, but we have enough information about it. Beta is a qualified firm to look at the new project. There's no question about that.
Okay.
It's just that, this type of peer review consultant process is typically in the discretionary authority of the permitting board, which is the case here. And as I noted earlier, a couple of issues came up about the efficacy of the peer review process the first time around. So that concern entered into the selection of the new peer reviewer. Beta is, I've worked with Beta on other cases. They're a very qualified firm, no question about it. But
okay.
They want, the selection was made for Tetra Tech because they had a good experience and they were concerned about what had happened the first time around on the peer review on this project.
Gotcha. Okay, good. That's really helpful. And then my second question, in Mr. Petrosi's note, letter to the board, he, on page 2, makes a claim that there in fact is a conflict of interest. And he cites that as being, because I guess there's another project that Wall Street has pending with the zoning board, and Tetra Tech has already been retained to do the peer review for that project. And Mr. Petrosi is saying that represents a conflict of interest. So I just wanted to address that point that Mr. Petrosi has raised. And based on your comments of a few minutes ago, George, you said there's clearly no conflict of interest, but I want to make sure we address that part of his letter.
Absolutely correct. Again, he does claim that conflict of interest. In my opinion, it's not a valid claim. You know, essentially a conflict of interest is, do you have a financial interest in the project, or what you commonly have this come up with your board? You know, do you have a financial interest, you or a family member, in some matter before you? And he makes no claim about that for Tetra Tech with respect to this project. So frankly, I don't understand the conflict of interest claim. In my opinion, it's not valid.
Okay, good. Thank you, George. Ben, I'm all set. Thanks.
Great, thanks, Jim. Mark Gallivan?
I would just say, having read all the material and listened to what's already been said, I'm not inclined to want to overrule the Zoning Board of Appeals. That's a good board. They do good work. And if that's the way they would like to go, I'm intending to back them on that.
And lastly, to wrap up this discussion, I just wanted to go back to, you know, David asked a great question about whether there was a hearing required. George explained that there wasn't. And just to go back and maybe clarify a little bit about the avenues for the select board here, we could have out of hand just not considered this, not had a discussion, not had a vote, and let the clock run out on it. Could have just ignored this letter, which to my mind is not an appropriate way to go forward. But given the narrow requirements as Joyce described them for the conflicts of interest and the other requirements, it's fairly straightforward. So dragging the ZBA and Mr. Petruzzi into our meeting and making a spectacle out of it did not seem like a reasonable or way forward either. So I think the matter before us is certainly plain. And if any other board members have a question or discussion point now, please bring it up. Otherwise, I would hear a motion. Yes, Nancy.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. George, I'm looking for your advice. I mean, if you've heard what we've all said, what do you think that we should do? I mean, I feel like Mr. Petrozzi is giving us a story, and he's trying to control a narrative, and he's trying to, you know, pretend like something is happening here. But to me, it seems very clear that the zoning board is doing their job. So, and where we have never had one of these, I mean, what is your suggestion for us to do?
Oh, as the chair had noted, you didn't even have to act on this. And if you did not act on it, there is no constructive approval of the appeal. So if the board had chosen not either inadvertently or chose deliberately not to act on it, the decision of the Zoning Board of Appeals stands. So you could kind of backdoor a approval of what the zoning board did by simply not acting on it. The policy question comes in, as the chair had noted, of not wanting to be the type of board to just let it pass. You're recognizing that there is this administrative right of appeal. You're acting on it in a timely manner, and it would be a policy decision for you to say, no, we don't want it to just pass and have the board's decision stand by our inaction. We've actually heard it. We saw the basis for the appeal. We heard the standard on appeal, and we're going to choose to affirmatively deny the appeal. So you would have that, you know, you have either option, either to
George,
act
can I just
on it.
piggyback on it
If you're
real
inclined
quick?
to uphold the board, you can either decline to act on it, which upholds their decision, or you could affirmatively vote to deny the appeal, which also is an affirmative act on your part to uphold the board's decision.
So should I make a motion, to back the Zoning Board of Appeals decision that was filed with the town clerk on, is it January 13th? Am I reading that right?
I actually think the selection was just the vote by the board.
Oh, okay.
You know, an easier way possibly of doing it that I would suggest is to make a motion denying the appeal of the board's selection.
Okay, I like that. I'll make a motion to deny the appeal that was given to the Board of Selectmen, dated December 8th, and it's our document number. I don't have it written on mine. Do you have it for our document number to reference the meeting? I can't see it here.
We don't have a document number, so it's just a letter from Wall Street Development Corp. dated December 8th.
Okay,
regarding Burns Ave.
Perfect. So moved.
I'll second that.
May I amend that to this extent? As a preamble to that, could we add that having found that the appellant has not met its burden to show a conflict of interest, nor to show that the Tetra Tech is an unqualified contractor, consultant, we move to deny the appeal.
Thank you, David. So mentioned.
I'll re-second that.
So we have a motion and a second.
And just counsel, does that caught all of the items, right? Those are the only two?
It's perfect.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, David. Being that there's no further discussion, we'll proceed to the roll call vote. Nancy?
Yes.
David?
Aye.
Jim?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
And Ben? Yes. The motion passes 5-0-0. Thank you, George. Really appreciate
You're
your
very
insight
welcome.
on this.
Do you need me at all anymore tonight?
I hope not.
I think so.
All right.
No offense.
Happy holidays, everybody. I appreciate
Likewise,
it. See
George.
you all. Good night.
Likewise. Take care. All right. Okay, moving on to the next item under new business is a vote request of Mr. Glenn Matthey for the Walpole Trails Committee to use Adams Farm on January 1st, 2021 from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. for the annual first day hike. I'll just say that Glenn provided a lot of literature on that. There's a lot of literature out on social media. Folks should really check it out. It's a fun event. I think this is the third iteration of it. Please, Nancy.
I'll make a motion to approve the request of Glenn Matthey, Walpole Trails Committee, to use Adams Farm on January 1st, 2021 from 9 to 2 for an annual first day hike, subject to them complying with any COVID-19 protocols that are in place at the time of the event. I did want to say I went last year on New Year's Day. It was so awesome. Last year was over at Sharon Country Day, the farm. It was a great event. They did such a fabulous job, and it was a lot of fun. So, Glenn, thank you. All of you guys that do, Gary, so much work. So anyway, that's my motion.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Being that there's no further discussion, we'll proceed with a roll call vote. Nancy?
Aye.
David?
Aye.
Jim?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
Ben, aye. The motion passes 5-0-0. Moving on to the next item, number 3 under new business is the updated charge for the 300th anniversary committee and vote to appoint additional committee members who have submitted applications to be involved here. Jim Johnson, if you could just give us the Reader's Digest version here on the updated changes to the charge.
Sure. Well, because the board has appointed more members than what is on the charge, I recommended to you to up the number of members. Originally, we said 7 members. We're currently at 8. And if you we have another person pending in here, I believe, right? And so I'm just asking you to up the number of members to 9 here.
Great.
11, right?
Sorry, 11. Yeah.
So I will make a motion to amend the number of the 300 anniversary committee members from 7 Walpole residents to 11. And I also just wanted to note that, thank you for sending out those to the past members, because it does seem like we got a great response from that. And for consistency and just for excitement, I think that's really good.
I'll second that.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Being that there is no further discussion, we'll proceed to the roll call vote. Nancy?
Yes.
David?
Yes, I just want to, yes, I'll deal with it after. Yes.
Okay, fine. Jim?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
Ben, aye. The motion passes 5-0-0. David, you have something to add?
I just think this will come into with talking about the role. I think obviously there's going to be a lot more work than these 11 may be able to handle. I think at some point, this is supposed to be like a guidance committee, like getting us through the year. Like, I think there's going to be other opportunities for committees for whether there's a parade committee or other committee, other ways that people can become involved, a fundraising committee and things like that, that may, evolve out of this. I think, I think 11's a good size. Let's not go too much bigger, but consider the fact that in the future, people will have other ways to contribute and be part of it. And of course, people can go to meetings and be part of it without being a voting member. And so, because I'm sure there's a lot of ideas out there and people want to contribute. So that's all I wanted to say about the size.
Yeah, I think it's point well taken. And we have two other individuals to make motions on and vote in there as well. Nancy, do you have something else to add?
I'll make those motions, but I just want to add that, David, I think you're 100% right. And so I do think it's awesome that we do have so many past members from the last time that wanted to come back on board. I am with you saying that, Jim, maybe we should also, in one of the early meetings for them getting together, you kind of, or have somebody, because of David mentioning fundraising, rules and laws have all changed since the last time this committee met, that maybe they could do a quick little Zoom of like an outline and just kind of the different governing things that are, could impact them in fundraising and that sort of stuff, just to make sure that they're in line with that sort of stuff.
Sure.
And then I'll make a motion to appoint Tim Hagler, Michael Power, and Lisa Van der Linden to the 300th Anniversary Committee.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Being that there is no further discussion, we'll proceed to a roll call vote. Nancy?
Yes.
David?
Aye.
Jim?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
Ben, aye, 5-0-0. Thank you to those folks for volunteering for this. And I think, Jim, we had, I'm sorry, Jim O'Neill. Yes.
Yeah, just one quick thing. Just thinking about where we are in the budgeting cycle and all that, and wondering if it makes sense to create a little bit of seed money for this group as part of this budgeting cycle. Setting aside a few $1,000s that could be utilized, and if we did that over the course of the next 3 or 4 years, as we get close to the 2024 event itself, that the town would be kicking in some money. So I think it would be something that would be a good idea for us to, put some seed money aside. I know it's not a great year to be talking about that, but 2024 is going to be here, and we are going to do the celebration, and I think we ought to do it right. So if we can set some money aside, I'd love to see us do that.
So I've thought about this a little bit, and one of the first items I was going to discuss with the committee whenever they meet is putting in a capital request. And that way, Jim, it rolls over year to year.
Yeah.
And I don't have to worry about reappropriating each year. Maybe they could get some seed money, $5, $10, $50,000, whatever they think's appropriate to ask capital budget. You have some people on that capital budget committee who's been around a long time. One that comes to mind is Ed Fosberg. So I know he's been here for a couple of these. So he'll understand that you need the seed money to get whatever it is, get sponsors and everything out there. So I was thinking of going that route. Okay.
That sounds great. Thank you.
Yeah, and so Jim, Jim Johnson, what do we need to do then to get this rolling? Can we email all those members who have been appointed and ask them, we'll set a date for their meeting. I guess the holidays are upon us, but maybe as soon after the new year as possible, have them incorporate, their chairs and vice chairs and get set up as a committee.
That's what I was thinking of, just
Right.
over the next week or two, put together a blanket email. I'll put you on it, Ben, as our chair, and just say, would you like to set up a meeting sometime in January, February to have you first elect the chair, vice chair, clerk, and start to talk about what your role is going to be, what the group hopes to accomplish and everything. So
Yeah, that'd be good. Get the ball rolling on that and get them all together. I know a lot of those folks, as we've said, are familiar and some may not be. So getting them all on a Zoom together, I almost said in a room together, but in a Zoom together would be appropriate. Yes, Nancy.
I'm interested in sitting along and just kind of being our ears if
Sure.
All are welcome.
if that
All are welcome. Yeah, they may have 11 members, but all are welcome. So we'll keep that as a consistent theme. Thanks, Nancy. Okay, let's keep moving along here. We have item number 4 under new business is a vote to approve the Senate redraft bill S2807. There's quite a lot of literature sent along, from Jim Johnson and then from our delegation as well on this over the past couple of days. So, Jim Johnson, if you could start us off with just a brief summary of what we're looking at.
Sure. So I had quite a bit of heartburn over the last few days about this, because initially I looked at what was proposed back, before COVID, and what the Senate sent over and approved back in the summer. So I was concerned with the changes that were made. Senator Feeney was excellent. He and I talked for a long time yesterday. So basically what happened was the House approved what was sent over back in the fall of 2019. Town meeting approved changing select men to select board by a citizen petition. We went through that whole process, and of course COVID hit, so everybody kind of tapped the brakes and hit the pause button on a lot of these types of things. The Senate took this up in the summer. They made some changes relating to gender. They're trending towards a more general, neutral terms as far as he, she. It's going to be they. Instead of referencing town administrator as a man, it just references the administrator. It just references citizen. So they want to keep it more gender neutral throughout. So the Senate bill, which the new bill is 2807, is quite a bit longer. It goes from about 155 lines and changes to 300 and 300 plus here, 313 changes. But after talking to the senator, I understand why they made the change, and they didn't treat Walpole differently than how they treat anyone across the state. Their council has been working over the last few years to, once these changes come before them, they just do a blanket change with they're focused in on the gender and not referring to a man or a woman. It's just gender neutral. After my conversation with Senator Feeney, I spoke to Lauren Goldberg, and she assured me that this is pretty standard across the board now. Really, most of the changes here are not substantive, and the intent of town meeting back in 2019 is still upheld here. And I asked Lauren to kind of join us on this, because this is the first time we've gone through something like this. The last change we made prior to this one was changing the finance director to also include the town accountant. It was really literally probably 4 or 5 changes. So that was some time ago. So Lauren, did I miss anything on that?
Mr. Chair, through you. No, you did not, Jim. I think you summarized it perfectly. I did review this on a line-by-line basis. The first thing I noted to Jim is that there's 50 extra sections in this bill. Almost all of them are changing the words him and her, or his and hers, to refer to the actual noun at issue, the town administrator. Instead of saying he they go back and they say the town administrator shall blah blah blah, and the town administrator shall. So they're getting rid of, as Jim said, all of the pronouns that are gender based. I also explained to Jim that in my experience, this can be very frustrating. And, you know, as I was going through, I'm trying to match up the sections that we had provided to the new sections, and they do things a little bit differently. There's a trend, though, in recent years where they have been making additional changes to what towns have requested for this reason. I did go through, as I said, every section, and what I discovered is that, as I said, the first major change category is the gender neutral. The second was that the council decided that rather than just referring to the board in a few instances, that it should refer more formally to the select board. So there were several changes where there was just the word board in the charter, and they added the word select board or select. And then there's also two sections that seem to me to be kind of taking out a little bit of the flowery nature that some charters can head towards. So overall, I don't see anything that's substantive in nature here. The intent of the revision is, in fact, to make it a more gender neutral document. And I would just note that the article that preceded this special act or this petition was a petitioned article. And then the first line of the petitioned article, it said to essentially eliminate gendered language or terminology from the charter. And then it said and it named just the things that we put into the bill, right? So we didn't add anything else. We didn't, try to second guess whether town meeting would or would not have wanted any additional language change. We did just what town meeting told us. We also voted, though, in a way that would give the legislature the ability to recommend changes that were consistent with the public purposes of the petition and reserve to the select board the ability to approve any such changes. So that's exactly where we are today. If they fixed one word, probably they wouldn't have sent this back to you for your approval, but it's more extensive than that, as you know. And so they look to get your assent to that in order for them to move the bill forward. One final thing to note is that if the bill doesn't move forward now, my expectation is that it's possible we would even have to re-vote it before next year, because the next session of the legislature starts in January, and sometimes they like a town meeting vote to be fresher. So dealing with it at this point will definitely eliminate any risk that it'll have to go back to town meeting.
Thank you, Lauren. Appreciate that, and thanks, Jim, for the back and forth with all of our representatives. I know that it was quite a lot out there, but it sounds like we've finally put our thumb on it. So we'll just go around here, and any questions for Lauren. Nancy, please start us off.
I didn't have a question. I was ready to make a motion, so I'll wait, I guess.
Please go ahead and make a motion, and then we can open for discussion.
I would like to make a motion, and I'd like to make the motion in giving prompts to Sarah Khatib for putting Walpole out there and getting us to this point. And so I'll make a motion to approve the Senate redraft bill S2807. And, she did a good job.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Nancy. Yeah, I'd be remiss if I didn't add that I did reach out to Sarah on this. I forwarded her the letter and all of the information, and so she was supportive of the change that had been made.
Yeah,
the citizens petition.
And I think Lauren made a good point that in the beginning of the petition, it was mentioned to make it gender neutral. So, I guess the Senate helped us out.
Motion second. Any
Before
further?
you vote on it, I just
Yes.
have one question for Lauren. Is that motion sufficient, do you think, for the Senate? And do we need a formal, I'm assuming we need some type of a letter from the select board notifying the Senate and our delegation that the board voted on this. Do we need that letter to come from the select board under Ben's signature as a chair, or as from the town clerk with her official stamp? What are your thoughts on that before they vote?
Thank you for that question, Mr. Chair, through you. I think it's actually fine for it to come from the select board. It can either go under the chair's name, or you could send it on their behalf. I don't think either choice would be a problem. I do also think that the motion is sufficient. The point is that the legislature asked, and specifically the Senate, they asked you to approve their redraft. This approves the redraft. If you wanted to, Selectman McKenzie, you could add to it something like approve the redraft as set forth in Senate 2807 as within the public purposes of the home rule petition.
So I'll amend my motion to approve the Senate redraft bill S2807 under home rule petition. Mm-hmm. And I am also authorizing that we forward this vote to the Senate from the Board of Selectmen with our endorsement.
I'll re-second that.
Fantastic. Thank you, Nancy. Any further discussion from the board? Being that there is none, we'll proceed with the roll call vote. Nancy?
Aye.
David?
Aye.
Jim?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
And Ben, aye. The motion passes 5-0-0. Thank you, Lauren. Really appreciate your help on this.
Of course.
Okay. We're moving on to the last item under new business here, which is a vote request of Eco ATM for a junk collector license at 550 Providence Highway, which is, I believe, the Walmart. Aoife, you had put together all the paperwork for this. Sounds like everything is in order. Aoife, from your standpoint, and Jim, from yours.
So
yep,
on
all
our
good
end,
on this end.
Yep, Aoife spoke to me before the meeting. It's just a $75 fee, and it's a new service Walmart's going to offer where people can turn in their old used phones and get some money for it. So there's not even going to be a clerk there or anything. It's just the machine.
Got it. Got it. Go ahead, Nancy.
I have a question. So they're looking for this approval. Aren't they already doing this?
Yeah, so I believe the machine is already there. They contacted me a couple of weeks ago. They have a headquarters in San Diego. So I think they were just kind of now following up on all the licenses that they needed. I don't think they realized that they needed something for it.
I'm just going to speak as far as my history and site plan approval process with Walmart, that they have a history of looking for approvals after. And not necessarily keeping up with, spacing in aisles and clearing and things like that. But also this sort of kiosk for cell phones, I know that, and David, maybe you know more about this, that it become a huge problem down at the Providence Mall, that people were stealing cell phones and then dropping them into these kiosks and getting money for them. I don't know. I don't love this option. I would like us to maybe discuss it a little bit more, but that's kind of my thought.
Thanks, Nancy. We'll go around then. David, do you have any comment on this?
No, that's an interesting wrinkle to this, though, that if they're just, how's it pay off, on a gift card or something? Or, I wonder if, these phones should be trackable. That's interesting. And I wouldn't doubt that, Walmart is consistently just does what they want and then come back and ask for permission later. But I suspect perhaps people didn't really realize that this was, they probably found out from some other town that they needed to get this. But I don't know. I'm not the issue of stealing phones and whether that attracts a crowd we don't want to the Walmart.
Okay. Thanks, David. Jim O'Neill.
Yeah. This this is an interesting question. And I wonder if it'd be worth asking Walmart what kind of controls they have around this. It doesn't seem to me that you should just be able to walk in and put a phone and get whatever gift card out, wherever it might be. And it does sound like that's how it works, which would, of course, then incent people to get cell phones any way they can. So I guess I'd love to hear more about the control framework around how it works, and maybe before we vote it, just because I'm really not comfortable with the thought that, literally people could be walking in with, bags of stolen cell phones and dumping them into the kiosk and getting paid out, unless there's some mechanism for accountability here.
Sure. Can I answer? Sorry, I just looked up their website just to see if they had any additional information on it.
Sure.
So you are required to present a valid ID, which is scanned when you go to the machine. And it says then they won't accept the transaction if the person doesn't match the ID, if you're under 18 or if the ID is invalid.
Very good. Thank you for that. Answers that question. Jim, please.
Yeah, I feel better about it hearing that. I still, I guess, it's an unmanned, unpersoned kiosk. And so when you think about how does the ID get checked? I guess I'd like to hear I'd just like to hear more about it. Do we really need to vote this tonight?
You can table it once you get some answers, Jim.
I would feel better because I'm blind on this one.
Sure. Yeah, I can definitely put something together too. There is a lot of information on their website. Even when the machine or when the device does go to San Diego, it's held for 30 days and they do checks on that end as well. But yeah, I can put something together for you guys.
And I guess I even would think that we'd like to, and getting from their website is good, but isn't there a person in the Walmart that is here in Walpole that should be able to speak to this?
So it's not the request for the license didn't come from Walmart. It came from their office in San Diego. But maybe they have some kind of regional rep or something that might be able to shed more light on how exactly it works.
So Jim, on my end, I could reach out to Phil. He's their local counsel, and just ask him to have someone present at one of your upcoming meetings to walk you through this, if you guys are comfortable with that.
Absolutely.
I feel better about that.
Yeah, that's fine, but to be sure, I'd like the board to put their questions together and get them over to Jim in advance of that. I'm not interested in having some sort of a firing range here for a product rep. To the extent that everyone has questions that are pertinent to this, security, where the phones go, and that sort of thing, I'd like to get them in writing and get them over to them beforehand, so we have some idea what we're talking about. Nancy, please.
Yeah, and we could also, reach out and see, what happened with maybe the mall down in Providence, because I remember it was like an article in the paper or something like that that's where it was a problem. So maybe they have upgraded technology and that's why it's different. But I guess if you steal someone's entire purse, you then probably have their ID and you could just dump it in there. But I'm not sure who owns Providence Mall, but maybe we could also just reach out kind of there, or maybe there's more articles, but I'm not sure. The vendor is gonna obviously also let us know, or also maybe the police department has some input on this.
Yeah, so let's collect more information on it to the extent that you all have questions. Let's put those questions in writing via email to Jim Johnson, please, so that he can put them together, get them to these folks so they have some idea of what's going on here, what our questions are, what our concerns are, and we can go from there. And if the answer is that they'll have somebody come into our meeting, great. We can work it from that end. Let's see, Mark Gallivan, would you have anything to add?
I think that's the right way to do it. I think it makes sense to wait and gather a little more info.
Great. Okay, thank you. All right, very good. So moving on, here a motion for the consent agenda, please.
I'll make a motion to accept with gratitude the following donations from Helen Horahan, the Council on Aging gifts for, and then in memory of William Backoff to the ambulance gift account.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Being that there is no further discussion, we'll proceed with a roll call vote. Nancy?
Yes.
David?
Sorry, yes.
Jim?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
And aye, the motion passes 5-0.
I'll make a
And
motion to approve the minutes for November 24th, 2020 as presented in our packet.
I'll second that.
we have a motion and a second. Being that there is no further discussion, we'll proceed to a roll call vote. Nancy?
Yes.
David?
Aye.
Jim?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
Then aye, the motion passes 5-0. And we have Town Administrator's update. Jim Johnson, the floor is yours.
Sure. A couple of items. COVID update. At this time, we have 799 total confirmed positive cases in Walpole. 680 cases have been completed monitoring. That leaves us with 119 active cases at this time. Darwin Lane. I wanted to give the board an update on Darwin Lane. The town was approached last week by Lou Petrozzi of Wall Street Development Corp. Inquiring about Darwin Lane. He asked for a meeting with some of our department heads to bounce some ideas off us. He's looking to develop a 3.5 acre parcel just off of Darwin Lane. You may recall that back, I think it was 2 town meetings ago, Brian and Darren Hassegager presented that to town meeting for consideration to be purchased through the water department. It wasn't acted upon favorably, so they pursued other options here. So Mr. Petrozzi is proposing a 28-unit 40B project on this site. He asked the town if we'd consider a 5-unit standard subdivisions instead of this 40B project. The catch is he wants the town to allow him to proceed with the planning board. And if he's denied the standard subdivision with the planning board, he wants the town to agree to waive the 1-year moratorium to file a comprehensive 40B application with the ZBA. Unfortunately, there's no mechanism in place for the town to preemptively waive the safe harbor provision with the 1 year. So further, we've asked town council for their opinion on this, and Amy Questle and Lauren have been great to deal with. And there's really no authority to overstep the bounds here. And I'm bringing this to your, excuse me, attention because I was hopeful that the select board could facilitate this request. But per the Department of Housing and Community Development's regulations, the Board of Selectmen may not waive the safe harbor. Only the Zoning Board of Appeals may do so once they have a comprehensive permit before them. So I'll be informing Ms. Petrozzi via letter tomorrow that we can't waive it through this board. I've already been in contact with 2 or 3 of the residents who live on Darwin Lane. They're obviously concerned with this project moving forward. That's a dead-end lane off of Common Street here, so it's going to be a lot more traffic with 28 houses there. So it's no actions needed, but I just wanted to let you all know that this is in the pipeline and it's coming along. So I asked Laura to stick around in case any of you had any questions about this, but if you do, let me know if either tonight or offline or whatever. Okay.
Thanks, Jim.
An update from the county. Obviously, I've been in contact with Mike Mullen, asking him, I've asked him a bunch of questions. Are the commissioners going to proceed with the solar farm up there that they're proposing in North Walpole? What's their timeline? Have they considered other sites? A bunch of questions. So Mike reached out this afternoon. He let me know that the county commissioners and the County Agricultural School Board of Trustees are holding a joint meeting on Tuesday, December 29th at 12 p.m. via Zoom. Mike advised that both boards will be receiving an update on the proposed solar project, and he wanted to make sure we knew about the meeting. He didn't give me any more specifics. He did let me know that no decision, he doesn't expect a decision to be made that day, but it will be an update. He gave me a copy of the agenda, and the Zoom link, which I've asked Mike Donovan to post on our schedule on our website and make sure that our residents are available. I'm going to reach out to a couple of the people up there who've been a part, and I've been in touch with Sue Shockett and Rudy, just to let them know that this is coming up and make everybody aware of it. And any questions? And just one last item. Christmas and New Year's, I know I want to take this opportunity to wish our residents and town employees a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. I know 2020 hasn't been an easy year for many people here, but I'm looking forward to a fresh start in 2021. I'm hopeful that the vaccine will be distributed and everyone who wants to get it will be able to get it in a timely manner, and there's got to be better days ahead of us. So that's it for me for updates.
Yeah, well said, Jim. Appreciate that. Yes, Nancy.
On the back of what Jim just said, I just wanted to tell everyone, I know the board knows, but this is what it looks like getting the vaccine. I had the vaccine over the weekend. I'm still here. I'm not green. My arm hasn't fallen off. I had a sour stomach, and my friends at work, same thing, have complained of the same thing for a couple days. I feel a little stuffy, like I'm having like an immune response, which is kind of normal. My arm felt like a tetanus shot as opposed to a flu shot, but you know, I'm very excited to have gotten it. I have seen just more death and more sickness and more sadness than I think that I should have had to have seen, and same thing with my friends at work, my coworkers. And you know, if you get the chance to get it, you know, I'm okay, and I am encouraging it. If anyone ever wanted to reach out to talk to me about it, I'd be happy to talk to you. But you know, we got to get past this. It's the only way to do it, and you know, science is behind it. And a shout out to the scientist who was a female, actually, years and years and years ago, that started this. So very exciting. You know, really breaking glass ceilings. And thank you. So everybody have a safe holiday, and can't wait for 2021.
Amen.
Thank you, Nancy. Absolutely.
Thanks, Nancy.
Absolutely. So that concludes our business and our agenda for tonight. If there's any further discussion or comments from the board, I'd hear a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Proceed with the roll call vote. Nancy?
Aye.
David?
Aye.
Jim?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
Ben, aye. The motion passes 5-0. Thank you, everybody. Happy holidays and a happy new year. See you in 21.
Thank you, everyone. Happy holidays.
Thank you.
Merry Christmas.
All right.
Bye.